Child sexual abuse is a form of child abuse that includes sexual activity with a minor. It is a crime that can have lasting effects on the victim for years and sometimes for life. Child sexual abuse does not need to include physical contact between a perpetrator and a child. The United Nations Children's Fund, in its report, explained that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 10 boys in Nigeria had experienced sexual violence before the age of 18. In addition, 6 out of 10 children in Nigeria experience emotional, physical, or sexual abuse before the age of 18. Now, with many experiencing physical violence, how can this menace be tackled? Human rights advocate and executive director, Initiative for Sustaining Family Unity, joins me now in the studio. Kate Ibianosi is here. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now, let's view this thing from different perspective. These cases of sexual abuse that we hear these days, are we having an increased number of occurrences, or it is the effect of social media and all of those things that is making it more prominent than it used to be? Has it always been like this, or the cases are rising?
I would say in the last 10 years, there's been an increase. Maybe in the last few years, the prevalence of the use of social media has made it more, is bringing it every day out. A lot of cases of child, especially when it's child sexual abuse, go unreported. For those that even make the attempt to report, they are either threatened or they become scared and they don't continue to pursue the cases. So yes, it is not that it is increasing now. What is making it known is because of people can easily just tweet about it, go on Facebook and report. That was not so 10 years ago. A lot of people were not on Facebook 10 years ago. The prevalence of Twitter was very minimal, I think, 10 years ago. So you didn't have people using their phones to just report incidents when they occur. But that it is increasing, it is not more than what has been happening before now.
Now, from your experience and your assessment, what could be, is it a psychological defect, or is it some kind of, what could make anyone, see a child and have some kind of a thought? Is it a mental disorder?
I will be very economical to say it's mental disorder, because the moment you put it that way, a lot of people will hide under the guise of mental disorder and do all kinds of things, right? There are people who are generally bad behaved, because the first thought that comes to your mind is not when you see a 5-year-old, you begin to desire that child. So there are people who are generally bad behaved. They may want to tie it to drunkenness or to mental disorder, but the truth is, why don't they approach their peers, their mates, if they actually have sexual desires? Because I have had 5-year-olds who were defiled brought to the office. And the question is, what will an adult be thinking of a child in Pampers? Right? So we can't call it mental disorder. Once you give it that title, a lot of clowns
people use it as an excuse.
They use it as an excuse and do all kinds of things. And when you ask them, they tell you they have mental disorder. So that is why I said I'll be very economical to say that. Yes, while you may, when some people go through clinical tests, they may be found to have mental challenges or mental health issues. That is not the primary cause. I think it stems from, one, how we have orientated ourselves. Some individuals have grown up to think that I can do anything that comes to my mind and nothing will happen. And when you have such individuals walking around, of course, abusing children will not be an issue to them, because it is one of those things they can do and get away with it.
So a lot of our upbringing and social values will have to be put to check here. Now let's flip it the other way, because every child, every minor is under a parent or a guardian. Now, the perspective of the parent who know that these things are prevalent in our society right now, and tell us generally what should we be looking at as parents and as guardians to some of these things. Unfortunately, some of the parents and guardians are involved in the same thing.
You have just taken that out of my mouth. The first question you want to ask is, the parents we have today, how much information do they have? What do they know? Do they know better? If a parent can expose their child in a way that does not look socially acceptable, all in the bid to think that we are exposed, we are in tune with the times,
we are modern,
we are trendy. I saw a video last week of a child. I don't think that girl is more than 3 years of age. And the mother was at a party, obviously. She will smoke shisha and put in the child's mouth.
We all saw that video. And it generated a lot of outrage.
Do you understand?
From people.
So you can also imagine the kind of information that these parents are exposing their children to. It's a very deep, right now we are all screaming and shouting because of the recent events we have seen. But child sexual abuse goes deeper. The responsibility of parents, you cannot remove the care and protection of children from parents. But one thing again is, what does these parents know? What do they know about taking care of their children, about providing the necessary information for the children, so that when the kids are not where they are, the kids can also protect themselves? Most of these parents don't know. They believe that they can allow their kids watch any kind of even adult movies. And we forget that what children see, they will play out. Adults have restraints, at least to an extent. They can decide, I don't want to do this.
You can discipline yourself.
But for a child, they see it, it looks normal. So if my mother allowed me to see it, if my father did not question it, then I can go ahead and do it. So the biggest responsibility on dealing with this lies with the families, the parents, first of all.
Now, there is a trend, in the cities these days where, remember, when we were growing up, at our own level, it is told that the community is the one that takes care of you. Sure. And an uncle or a cousin or even somebody, an elder within the village sees you doing something wrong, can cut a cane and flog you. In fact, they will take you to your father's house first.
After beating you.
And then they will beat you there. Yes. Or they'll beat you first and then drag you to your...
Yes.
And then your parent, your dad, mom is not going to ask, why did you beat the child?
They'll take over from where...
In fact, they continue from there.
Continue from where the
And
stops.
that may be the end of you doing that, because you know that everybody in the community or village frowns at it.
Paying attention to
But
you.
now there's the concept of, is my child, anything I want to do with my child is my business, not your business. How is that creating issues around? Because sometimes, because the reality there is, parents, because everybody is busy, the time they spend with their children on one-on-one is less. Other people spend more time with the children right now.
It is not helping, right? It is not helping because also every other person is thinking, please, this one is not my child. I do not have responsibility towards them. We all have become very individualistic. One thing we could pride ourselves about as Africans was that we were communal.
Yeah,
communal. And that we looked after the well-being of ourselves and the people around us. But today we have become very individualistic, where it's not my child. You see a child doing something wrong, you can't even as much as tell the child, oh yeah, leave that place. Because you're thinking, if I say so, the mother or whoever is the guardian may come out and attack me. So everybody is doing is my own thing. It's not helping. When we are now advocating that see something, say something. But how will I see something and say something if I say it, the parent of the child comes out against me? It only becomes a national outcry when things like what we have seen in recent times happen. But when it's happening on a day-to-day basis, and you maybe call the mother and say, please watch this child, that kind of thing. They look at you like, please mind your business. She's my child, I can do whatever and all of that.
But even in that, because we all now know the dangers of that thing. It's my child, so whatever. Of course, the parent could be arrogant, and it is also because of the parent's upbringing, maybe, or whatever the parent is exposed to. But can't we stand our ground to say what is wrong is wrong? Whether the parent, comes against you or not, but the point there is that posterity will bear you witness that I made that statement because it's wrong.
A few people are still able to do that, but it comes down to information. What information is available? You cannot give what you don't have. If, for instance, I was telling my friend last night, I said, see, If I see a child playing and an adult man or a grown boy comes and says, my wife, I will tell instantly, go and look for your mate to marry. Leave that child. Because I know. And they explained, the example I gave to her was, we have families, and these children are in families. They see their father and mother. The father is the husband, the mother is the wife. There's a special care and attention between these two. And so if an adult person comes and calls a little girl my wife, she expects the same care the father gives to the mother to be given to her. Right? And so if that happens, you now see an adult telling a child, my wife, and every time you see that little girl, she's running after that man. She doesn't know anything, right? And this is how they groom little children to gain their confidence, and then they can begin to abuse that child, and the child will not be able to tell anybody. So for people like us and a few people who know, once you see that, even when it's an innocent gesture, you want to nip it. But a lot of people do not know. And so it comes down to what information is out there. Are we making an effort to even learn what the signs are? And so that when we see it anywhere, whether it's in our neighborhood or outside, we can be able to say, oh, this is not right, so stop. Whether they are telling you it's none of your business or not, at least you would have done your part. What information do we put out there?
All right, now let's talk about the issue of social media and the impact. Someone said that social media is a tool. You can use it anyhow you want to use it. It can be a tool for good, and it can be a tool for bad. But however, the point there is, at what age should, children become exposed to some of these things? Because, for instance, you go on Twitter, because it doesn't have age restriction, whatever. A child is, or anyone, in fact, sometimes one feels embarrassed when you're on Twitter and then you see some kind of videos and pictures and all of that. So the point there is, social media, at what age should children be allowed to go into all of these things? Recall that just recently, the Chrisland school something where the little girl who was involved was said to be, be on a social media platform that the parents or the others were not even aware. How dangerous is that?
It's a dangerous trend. Like you have said rightly, social media is a tool for good. It can also be a tool for propagating all kinds of negative information. Now again, it comes to, I cannot sit down here and police when you hand over internet access to your children. But at the same time, it still comes to the adults in the lives of these children. At what point do you think your child is matured enough to have unfettered access to internet use? Yes, I know that schools COVID-19 made it possible for almost every child of school age to have a Google account and all that. But what restrictions are there that you have put? A 13-year-old, if you ask me, has no business really being on Facebook and on Twitter and all that. What do they want to put out there if they are not guided? I know that there are kids who are very smart, who are, putting out content that are very valuable and educational. With the guidance of their parents or their guidance, they can put out those information. They don't do it on their own. But when you allow an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, have a phone that has internet access, and you are not even, there are no restrictions, there are no parental locks on the phone, so that there are words they cannot search for. You just allow them. Even me as an adult, I have put restrictions on so that there are information that if they come, they'll tell you this content cannot be shown. I will be the one to grant access to it for me to know what it is. Now, parents are leaving their children to browse through the web, and there are pop-ups that come, and these kids will get fascinated by these things, and the next thing they want to try it out, because for them it's harmless. Like I said, I will not police when you give your child a phone or when you allow them access to an internet. But common sense tells you that these children are still very young. They are very impressionable. There are things they will see, and they don't know what it means. They just want to try it out. You as a parent or a guardian has a responsibility to restrict the kind of information you expose your children to at a certain age. Except you have raised them to that stage where they are matured to the extent that they can take certain decisions that will not harm them or bring problems to you as a family. Why will you allow them to have that kind of unfettered access?
Let's talk about issues of prosecution here. The point there is, when it comes to sexual abuse, we know the complexity of the issue, because the moment you get to court and the court is saying that, well, there has to be scientific evidences that this happened and that happened, and then, you know, because there was both of you or the persons didn't agree to put a video somewhere or sign a document somewhere, we're going to be involved in this and all of that. So it becomes difficult to produce an evidence. But meanwhile, the person, the victim who is involved, is going through all the pains, the psychological and mental pain that she could go through. How challenging is this, and what should we be doing to ensure that we handle that issue?
Prosecution has always been a problem. And it's a problem because the burden of proof is on the victims, right? I know that Lagos State has made an attempt with the Lagos State Domestic Violence Law and the Child Rights Law of Lagos State to minimize how that goes. Today, there are family courts in Lagos where you take such cases to, and they deal with it without really allowing you, the victim, to go through all that pressure of proving what has happened. But it's still a huge problem. I think even before prosecution, the problem of reporting is high. A lot of people, for fear of what they will say, refuse to report even cases of child sexual abuse that have been brought to their knowledge. Then, of course, you go through the first stage of going to the police to report and going to get the tests done and all of that. One of the challenges people have is the challenge of secondary victimization, where they go to these places and they are told, what were you wearing? How were you behaving? Were you out without your parents? You know, things like that. And then it puts that child under pressure, or even the adult who has been abused. And so people think, instead of going through all of this, let's run away. So because of that, even the gaps in the judicial system and the prosecution cannot easily be pointed out, because people are not even wanting to use the processes. Because it's only when you use them, we can say, oh, this is not working. Let's review, let's change. I know that before Fashola left, he came up with the criminal administrative law, which helps to reduce some of these bottlenecks around how cases of this nature are dealt with. But how many people want to access it? They still have this belief that if I go to the police, everybody will hear. If we go to courts, people will see. Why not go, use the systems, and let's know where the faults lie, and then address those fault lines and see how we can strengthen our judicial system for this purpose.
Now, you talked about the issue of secondary victimization. The issues of stigma is always there. And for those who have already been victims of this, what kind of mechanism is there to counsel them and get them out of that trauma that they have been put through?
There are systems in place right now. I know that there are one-stop centers where a victim of sexual violence will go in. From the point of reporting, they are taken for the initial checks. It is reported to the police. They are put through counseling, through a program of counseling where they are helped to come out of the trauma. At least first thing is to disabuse their minds that they are not at fault. Because for many of these victims, the burden on them is that I must have brought it upon myself. And that alone makes it even difficult for them to tell their stories.
Because they're living with guilt already.
The guilt of, it must be my fault. I've seen a child ask me, is it me that caused it? And I said, it's not your fault. You didn't do anything. That person was just not a good person. So there are systems like that in place. Are we accessing them? Do we want to access them? We want to keep them under wraps. If not that this came out, probably the school, the parents would have hidden it, and let's go and deal with it privately. A lot of people don't want to go through that process because they think it exposes them, but they forget to know that there are also privacy laws that guide how these practices operate, such that if a little child comes into the office for that purpose, I can't show the child's face. I cannot tell the child's name in public, except maybe when we go to a court. And even in the family courts, it is out of the view of the media. And even when the media is there, they are told you don't take a photo of this child, you don't put out the child's real name. But people are still afraid, they're still skeptical, they don't want to use these systems. Those systems exist. There are organizations, there are institutions that are now empowered, and they have the skills to really do those kind of counseling, walk the children through a process of recovery. But people don't want to. That's why I said information. What is the information available? Are people using them? Or we are only interested in the fun things?
But when it comes to for people who have, had issues like that happen around them, or even they are the victims, the numbers to call, who do they call, where do they get to, and all of that?
There is the Domestic Violence Response Team of Lagos.
Okay.
That's usually one spot where you go to. Okay. They're at Alausa.
Okay.
There is the Mirabel Center that is situated at Lasuf. At least these two places are places that if you walk into, they will direct you to the right help that you need.
Thank you so much, Kate Ibeanosi. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for coming on the program today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.